whether thou art a ghost that hath come from the earth, or a phantom of night that hath no heart, or one that lieth dead in the desert, or a ghost unburied, or a demon, or a ghoul. Whatever thou be, until thou art removed, thou shalt find here no water to drink. Thou shalt not stretch forth thy hand to our own. Into our house enter thou not. Through our fence break through thou not. We are protected, though we may be frightened. Our life you may not steal, though we may be scared to death.
Welcome to Scared to Death, Creeps, Peepers, Roberts, and Annabelles. I'm Dan.
Hello, Dan.
You're Lynze. Happy 4th of July. Barely caught that this episode comes out the week of 4th of July.
I know, we're working on getting ahead and we're doing a great job.
I'm working on writing little dates in my notes. So I'm like, oh yeah, it'll hopefully trigger like memories of what holiday or month is coming up. Try and get better about it.
Well, you know what? Guess what? We're not a show about holidays. So if you forget,
True.
it's going to be okay.
It's okay.
People are going to forgive you.
Since it is July now, we have some new merch.
That's true.
Introducing a fun fan art collection by Creeper Raymond Roll. You can check out a few of his cool designs, including an alien abduction, a depiction of death, and Baphomet. Along with Raymond's art, we're bringing back some old favorites this month. The Fire Dancer tee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, featuring a group of joyful dancing skeletons around a ceremonial fire. And reintroducing the classic comic tee, featuring a comic book cover design of a lovely couple camping, unsuspecting of the skinwalker just behind their campsite. I used to wear that shirt a lot. Mm-hmm.
I'd have to see it to remember it.
You'd
You
be
wear
like,
a lot.
oh, yeah.
You wear a lot of graphic tees, so.
And that's all I got for announcements. How many fan-submitted, allegedly true paranormal horror stories do you have for us this week?
I'm not going to tell any stories this week.
Not going to? Okay. All right. I'll just try and stretch mine.
No, I have two. My first up is an unresolved tale, which we know just thrills me to death when we don't have answers. But it's one of those stories that makes you wonder, like, what's going on there? Is it the person? Is it the situation? Without an answer.
Yeah.
I think it's left open to interpretation.
Okay.
And then my second story, more unexplained events, and it feels like it's escalating towards something, but what? I don't know.
Okay. All right. I'm looking forward to those stories.
You better.
And just as a reminder, where should fans submit their paranormal encounter stories? What's the email again?
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to share that. It's my story, my story at scaredtodeathpodcast.com. If you send it to info, I don't even read it. I just send it right over to my stories.
Okay.
So you're not going to cheat
my
the
story
sister.
Singular or my stories?
Singular. As
Okay,
it's
okay,
always,
okay.
As it's always
Yeah, I thought
said.
so, but I thought you said it plural that second time.
my
Okay.
story at.
Confirming.
Well, I said if you send it to the my story email.
Gotcha.
That's what you heard.
Yep. I have two stories. I have a creepy doll double feature today.
Oh, we just had a creepy doll.
Mm-hmm. We've had some dolls lately.
Juliet.
Yes. Yep. Joliet. I have two today. For my first doll-related tale, I'll share a story of a little brother terrorized by his older sister's doll, first by her pranking him with it over and over, and then later the doll seems to take the pranking a little bit further all on its own. And then my next doll tale revolves around the creepy Switzerland legend, so Swiss legend of the Sennentuntschi. Can a carved wooden doll come to life?
Yes.
Can it get jealous?
Yes.
And most disturbingly, can it skin you alive?
No. I say no. No shanks.
So once you're socked up and protected from forces of evil, I'll get started.
Look at these. Now look at they're tucked into my jeans because I wanted you to be able to really see my little Frankensteins.
Those are cute.
They are cute. Now I'm going to pull my jeans back over them like a normal person would do.
Okay.
It's not really comfortable.
No setup on this first story of mine. We're just going to jump right into this anonymous encounter with something potentially demonic.
Let's go.
Time now for the tale of Little Lamb. I'm not sure where else to post this story. I'm not sure it even qualifies as a story. There's a beginning and a middle, but I'm not sure that there's an end. But still, I need to get this out there. I need someone to hear it. It's going to sound made up, and I know that. And I know that almost everyone who shares a story similar to this one adds that qualifier. But it's true. Something happened today that I just can't explain. Or maybe I can, and that terrifies me. When I was a little boy, my sister Haley's favorite thing to do was to scare me. I'm 5 years younger than her, and she was also stronger than me, both mentally and physically. She grew up to be a boxing instructor at a local gym. I played the clarinet in marching band for 7 years. She's an aggressive proponent that honesty is the best policy, even if it means pissing someone off, or in my case, making them cry. I was until recently always a people pleaser. Worse than a people pleaser. A people appeaser? For most of my life, I've just wanted to tell people what they've wanted to hear and stay out of their way. For most of my life, most of the time, I've wanted to be invisible. Haley was braver than anyone I've ever met. And I've been, as you can probably guess by now, not like that. I just never had it in me. When Haley would scare me, I'm not sure if she was just preying upon my weaker persona or genuinely trying to toughen me up. Probably a little bit of both. And she always thought it was really funny when I would scream like a little girl, as she liked to say. So that's probably a part of it too. Anyway, growing up, I was generally terrified of everything from social interactions with girls in my class to getting murdered on the way home from a late night band practice. But more than anything else, I was scared of dolls. I still am. They just freak me the fuck out. And I don't feel like I need to explain why. I think we all generally understand how porcelain faces, painted baby smiles, and dead eyes that bore into your very soul might be upsetting to some of us. I hate them. When my little sister was really little, however, she loved them. Her room was adorned with body after body after body of dozens of dolls she collected in the few years she'd been on Earth. I don't remember this period in time because I was maybe 2 or 3. But according to my parents, Haley had one specific doll that inexplicably made me start crying every time I saw it. It was this little Raggedy Ann type soft doll with a cloth face and the saddest, most depressing eyes you've ever seen. Each of its cheeks had 3 symmetrical freckles and this weird red triangle for a nose and a straight line for a mouth. It had orange yarn for hair and was wearing a plaid pinafore dress. You get the picture. It's not like it was the most visually grotesque thing in the world. It didn't look outwardly obviously scary at all. It just looked pretty old-timey and outdated. But even so, it scared the shit out of me. The doll's name, christened by my sister, was Little Lamb. And as soon as Haley figured out how much little toddler me hated Little Lamb, she immediately started to use it to her advantage. She would place it in her doorway if she didn't want me wandering into her room. Or if I was playing with a toy she wanted to play with, she would go get Little Lamb and wave it around to my face until I surrendered whatever it was that she wanted. Eventually, when Haley was 9 or 10, something switched, and she decided she despised dolls. In her usual authoritarian fashion, she demanded our parents pack them all up and lock them away in the basement. All, of course, but one. Little Lamb. My sister couldn't quite give up her secret weapon, and it was around this time that she started to develop a taste for pranks. It was an early summer evening, and I remember it had been maybe a month or so since the mass deportation of dolls from my sister's bedroom. Who really knows, though? Could have been a year later. When you're a kid, time is all wonky. Either way, one evening my mom sat my sister and I in front of the living room TV to watch some cartoons while she ran to the grocery store. I know. People might not leave a 10-year-old in charge of a 5-year-old nowadays, but it was the early 2000s, and the grocery store was only 3 blocks away. I remember we were watching Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends when my sister blurted out that if I went and got us some Otter Pops from the basement freezer, she would let me play on her Nintendo DS until Mom got back. I immediately agreed to her terms and rushed into the bathroom to grab the little stool my mom kept for me to be able to reach the sink. I was a short kid. With the stool under my arm, I ran down the gray carpeted stairs into the unfinished basement. My mom always had big plans to put in a kitchenette and guest bedroom down there, but after she and my dad got a divorce, her enthusiasm for the redo pretty much dissipated. At 5 or 6 years old, I rarely ventured into the basement without my mom or a friend to play pretend with. The exposed concrete walls of the foundation and cement floors made a pretty good setting for my Galactic Army's headquarters, as we pretended it to be. But when I got down there, all alone with nothing but the weakening daylight leaking through the dingy egress window, the basement felt less like a supersonic sci-fi mission control center and more like a crypt. I wanted to crawl back up the stairs to safety, but the desire to play Mario Kart and my love of a sticky blue popsicle forced me to press on. I hurried to the bulky freezer in the corner of the room. It was tucked in between 2 precarious stacks of boxes of things that used to be important to somebody. Each cardboard box was discolored, faded, and forgotten about, just like the contents they held. One of them was labeled Haley's Dolls. I avoided eye contact with the looming tower of memories and plopped the stool down in front of the fridge. Even with it, I had to stand on my tiptoes to reach the door handle of the freezer on top. Finally, I was able to grasp it and swing it open. The dull light bulb inside buzzed and I screamed. Little Lamb was sitting on top of the box of Otter Pops. Her head was slumped to the side, her awful beady eyes staring down at me. Terrified, I tried to step back to escape her fingerless hands, and I slipped off the stool. My ass hit the concrete with a dull thud, and the reverberations from my fall must have shaken the fridge because Little Lamb came tumbling down after me. She landed on the stool, splayed flat on her back. I screamed again and scrambled away, first crawling, then sprinting out of the basement and up the stairs. At the top of the stairs was Haley, laughing hysterically. Of course she was. She'd set the whole thing up. I didn't stop crying until Mom came back home an hour later. For the next 10 or so years, Little Lamb would intermittently appear to scare the shit out of me. Horrified, I would find her on my bed when I came home late from band practice. Or I would open my backpack in math class to find her menacing face peering up at me. I would have thrown her away, but Haley made it very, very clear that if anything ever happened to Little Lamb, there would be hell to pay. She didn't even tell me what it was, only that it would be worse than anything I could ever imagine. And I could imagine some pretty awful punishments, so I never got rid of the nasty little bastard. The day after I got my first car, Little Lamb was sitting on the passenger seat. The night I brought my first girl home, she was propped up on my bedside table next to a bottle of lotion and some Kleenex. Thanks, Haley. It got me every single time. I couldn't help it. You would think I would get used to the pranks, but instead it felt like each time was worse than the last time. I hated that doll so much. It wasn't just seeing her in a place I didn't expect that would scare me. It was the afterwards, after she was gone. After I threw her into my sister's room, she still felt like she was there, watching me. She never completely went away. And if it never got old for me, it sure as hell never got old for Haley. She got a kick out of it every time. Even the handful of times she irritatingly denied moving the doll at all. Like when I woke up at 13 to Little Lamb sitting at the end of my bed. Or when I was home alone for the first time and found her sat at the head of the kitchen table. Even though she denied being responsible for it, Haley always got a chuckle out of it. But then, when I was 15 and she was 20, Haley died. She killed herself. And no, we did not see it coming. And yes, she had been struggling for a long time. Anyway, she died. And a year after she died, my mom and I decided to clean up some of the stuff in her room. It was a bleak, insufferable, absurd task, tidying up your dead sister's things. But it was one my mom insisted we do. I think she needed it. She was ready. I don't know if I was. At one point, I made my way to the closet and opened the door. Suddenly, yet again, I was face to face with Little Lamb. I gasped and stumbled backwards. Leaning against the bed, I stared at the doll. She was shoved on a shelf in between a basket of old band t-shirts and a pile of baseball caps. And yet another moment of the absurdity, my fear melted into something odd. Laughter. At first I was just nervously chuckling, staring at the stupid doll. Then I was full-on belly laughing, almost violently so. Haley had managed to scare me one last time. Or so I thought. My mom decided to take Little Lamb and reunite her with my sister's other dolls in the cardboard box in the basement. I was glad to see her go. But then about a week later, my mom was visiting her sister up north, and I was home alone for the weekend. And the first night she was gone, I woke up to the sound of something shuffling around. Or at least while I was asleep, I thought I heard shuffling. When I actually woke up and listened to the dark, I heard nothing. I told myself it was a dream and went back to sleep. But soon after, there it was again, that soft, muted shuffling. By that point, I was wide awake. I laid flat in bed, staring at the ceiling. Again, the sound stopped. But I felt something. I felt someone in the room with me. I whispered, "Mom?" Nothing. Not knowing why, I then said, "Haley?" Something slammed into the ground. I frantically reached for my bedside lamp and tried over and over and over to switch it to on, but my fingers were so fucking clammy I couldn't get a grip. And then I heard that shuffling sound again. It was coming closer. Soon I felt like it was in bed with me. I wanted to scream. I'd already started to cry. Finally, I got a good enough grip with my stubby, sweaty fingers to turn the light on. My desk chair was laying on the floor. It had somehow tipped over. I scanned the room for what could have done it, grasping for any sort of reason, any sort of reality. Nothing. Exasperated, terrified, and confused, I leaned back against the headboard and tried to catch my breath and screamed again. Little Lamb was sitting on my bed, leaning against my pillow. Her head was slumped to the side, just like it always was. I violently scrambled off the mattress and into the hallway, tripping over my feet and then the carpet. The rest of the night is a blur. I know people will want to know what I did, but honestly, I can't really tell you. It's truly kind of a blur. I know for sure I turned on all the lights and stayed in the living room for the rest of the night, pacing and jumping at every creak the house made. I know at one point I turned on reruns of Friends to drown out my paranoia. It only kind of worked. And before you ask, no, I didn't call my mom. She had just lost her daughter. I didn't want to put this on her. I know people will say that was a stupid move, but it seemed like the right one to me. What I can tell you is that once morning came, I yanked that fucking doll off my bed and shoved her in the trash, then waited on the porch for the dump truck to pick it up. I felt immense relief as I watched the truck drive away with little Lamb inside and pictured her getting incinerated later that day. I'm pretty sure they don't even incinerate regular trash like that, but I pictured it all the same. It felt glorious. That night, I invited a few friends over to watch John Wick. And again, before you ask, I didn't tell them about it either. I just wanted the whole thing to go away. I didn't want to think about it, or talk about it, or even acknowledge it. I just wanted to watch Keanu Reeves do some cool stuff with a gun. The next morning, my friends departed, and I cleaned up the minor mess we made. Then I left to go run some errands, and by errands, I mean I went to GameStop. When I came home, my mom's car was in the driveway. I ran to her like I was 10 years old again, gave her the biggest bear hug I could muster without crying. "Hey, Mom, I missed you. How was Aunt Carrie's?" I asked. She seemed exasperated. "Oh, it was fine. Good to see her. I missed you too. But when I came home, this was on the porch," she said, reaching for something behind her on the counter. "Did you mean to leave it out there?" I stared at the doll in her hands, its beady fucking eyes staring right back at me. I didn't. I tried to get the words out, but they wouldn't come. She set little Lamb back on the counter and rubbed her tired eyes. "Listen, honey, I know you don't like this thing, but putting it outside, it could have gotten rained on, or someone could have stolen it. I don't know why you took it out of the box in the first place, but just." She looked everywhere but me. I could tell she was trying not to cry. "Just leave your sister's stuff alone, okay?" "Okay, Mom," was all I said. I watched her as she made her way to the basement to lock the doll up once again. She looked so weak, so broken down. I didn't know how to help her, and I didn't know how to ask for her to help me, so I just said nothing and went back upstairs. But that night, I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the anxiety and fear and the suffocating burden of this unexplainable, horrible thing, the waiting for the doll, the spiraling insanity at the realization that I was waiting for a doll. So when I was sure my mom was sound asleep, I slipped out of bed, put on some sneakers, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was standing at the top of the staircase, peering down into the cement abyss of the still unfinished basement. I took a deep breath and hurried down the stairs. To keep my mind off the creepy doll I was going in search of, I thought of my sister and Otter Pops and her Nintendo DS. It made me sad, but in that moment, being sad felt better than being scared. Before I knew it, I was standing on the very same stool I did back when I was 5, and reaching for the most recent addition to the tower of things that used to be important to people, and an unstained cardboard box labeled Haley's Things. Resting on top of my sister's old jerseys and sweatshirts was Little Lamb. I don't know if it was the horror of my sister's death or the cloth doll in my hands, but suddenly I was overcome with agony, piercing, all-consuming agony. I was cold. I was scared. I wanted to be gone. I ran up to the living room with the doll in my hand and remembered what it was like to crawl up the stairs as a kid thinking something was chasing me. This time, I felt like whatever had always been in pursuit of my flesh stayed behind, waiting in the basement for me to return. No longer worried about waking up my mom, I snatched my keys from the kitchen counter and bolted out the door. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just knew I couldn't look at the doll splayed out like a murder victim in my passenger seat much longer. I drove and drove into the night, scraping the inside of my brain for some semblance of a plan. My skin felt frozen over. I was nauseous. I felt like at any moment I could die. I would crash my car or have a heart attack or get shot by some other lone driver in the night, and no matter how I died, it would be the doll's fault. Somehow, it would be because of her. Finally, on some remote highway, I got the nerve to pull over. I ventured as far from the road as I dared and found some soft soil by the base of a bush. I thought of my sister. Would she be proud of me for facing my fears? In the night? In the dark? Or would she make fun of me for being so desperately terrified of a little baby doll that I had to go bury it in the woods? Using my hands, I carved out the wet dirt, making a deeper and deeper hole until my fingers were raw. Then, I dropped Little Lamb into it. With every handful of dirt I suffocated her cloth body with, I felt displaced, erased. I felt like the deeper underground I buried her, the more dirt I choked on, like I was reliving someone else's murder, like I was killing her and being killed at the same time. It's hard to explain. It was horrible. I felt like the corpse at a funeral. But finally, it was done. When I got home, my mom was still asleep, courtesy of the medication she'd been taking since Haley died. I went downstairs to clean up the scattered boxes and remembered that at one point in time, that basement was a galactic spaceship, and I was the commander. At one point in time, my sister and I watched cartoons together while our mom scrambled to get us groceries. At one point in time, I had a sister, but she was gone now. At one point in time, I was scared of a little doll, but she was gone now too. That was almost a decade ago. 4 years after Haley died, my mom passed away from cancer. After that, everyone told me I should track down my dad since he was the last living family member I had left. But I didn't because that's not true. I have a beautiful wife now, and a 1-year-old baby girl named Haley, after my sister. They are the loves of my life. I would do anything for them. For them and because of them, I finally became the brave man I've always wanted to be. My sister would be proud. But today, something happened that really shook me, and I'm not feeling very brave right now. I'm feeling like the scared little kid I used to be. My wife and I went to a local antique mall, shopping for a vintage tea set to get her sister for her birthday. While I was looking at some old gunpowder canisters, my wife called me over to another booth. "My love, come here. What do you think about this for Haley?" she said, gesturing to her right. "Too old school?" There, sitting neatly on the shelf, was Little Lamb. Not the same kind of doll as Little Lamb, the exact same doll. I knew it. I know it. With every cell in my body, I know it was her. I'd recognize her anywhere. She was cleaned up, no trace of dirt on her, but it was Little Lamb. I know it was. She found me. And even though I talked my wife out of buying her, I know now I'll see her again soon. Maybe in my house, maybe in my room, or in Haley's room, maybe being held by my daughter. So what do? How do you get rid of something that just won't stay gone?
I would freak out in that antique store.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I only have one picture. This is supposedly Little Lamb.
I don't want to look. Oh, that's not what I was picturing.
Not naturally scary.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking like of a more of like a doll-like face, not like a potato face.
Like a little cloth, yeah, Raggedy Ann face.
My aunt had the sock puppet, the monkey sock dolls.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I hated those things. They scared the shit out of me. Why are they so creepy?
And yeah, what if one just kept showing up in places and then you literally bury it and then you see that thing at some little like antique shop or some little store?
Nope.
Yeah. So I thought that was a good haunted doll store. Those are hard to find.
It is. How much do you love Otter Pops? Well, I don't think you love popsicles the way I love popsicles.
I don't. Yeah, I love the same way, but I don't mind them. I've had it before.
I love a popsicle. And when we were growing up, my mom would not buy Otter Pops. Too much sugar.
Ah, okay.
And now I'm really stuck on Johnny Pops. Those are the ones I've been really gnawing on after a sleepy gummy.
I used to like there was the one kind that had 2 popsicle sticks sticking out of the bottom, like you could snap it in half.
Yeah.
The root beer flavored one of that.
Oh.
And then there was a yellow one that was kind of banana-ish, more like banana taffy, that flavor.
The ones that your mom always has?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. So I did like those for a little while in the summers when it was hot, like playing outside a bunch as a kid.
Uh-huh.
But ever since, I haven't really cared about them. Like Jell-O popsicles, I don't really care.
Did you guys ever have like the Schwan Man and like outside and like order your own ice creams and that stuff?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. The guy in the truck that would just drive to the neighborhood?
Yeah, our big
you
thing
could,
was
make
always
an
like
order.
the orange push pops.
Yep.
Oh my God, yes. I did have those. And those were not like popsicle. It was almost more like
Sherbert-y.
Like a tube.
Sherbet, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a sherbet.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
God, those were good.
Uh-oh.
I forgot about those. Yes, I forgot all about
Could
those.
you?
Oh, now I'm having like these flash memories of pushing. You just push the little plastic thing up in like a cardboard little cylinder, and then I remember like just licking the plastic when we'd push it all the way up.
Yep.
And just trying to get a little bit more flavor off of those.
And then there was
God, I love those.
Yeah, there was the orange ones, and then there were like the Flintstone ones that were multicolored. I think like red, purple, and maybe orange was the other color.
There's like a push pop too.
And then, so I would keep the plastic interior because this is like what little girls do. I don't think it's like as common with little boys, but I would use it for something like with my Barbies. Like I would distinctly remember. Like I would just hang on to them. Same with like when you would get pizza and it had that like plastic white thing in the middle. I don't even know what the purpose of that thing was. I think like theoretically it was like, so your pizza doesn't slide around, but it does not make sense.
I think it's so the box wouldn't get stuck in the cheese on the top of the pizza.
Okay.
It's like a little barrier for the box.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though that's not going to happen. But okay, I would say those made really good tables in my Barbie house.
Oh, yep.
So I would have those, and then I would have the popsicle things where it's like I knew it was too tall to be a table, but somehow like, kids, you just like fashion things together. I loved that. I love that. I was really proud of you for saying Keanu Reeves and not
I had to
Keanu Reeves.
I had to pause. Keanu. Yeah, it's like such a weird old habit. And now even though I've like made fun of myself and stuff, I still, when I see the word, I like.
You want to say?
Yeah, the memory is I want to say canoe.
I love it. I love it. So if you're looking for a Keanu Reeves t-shirt, they're probably still available in our store. And then, just when he was talking about burying the doll and saying that like, he felt like he was being buried with it or whatever, experiencing that. I don't know what is going on in the world, but I have gotten in the last week multiple articles in my news feeds about people being declared dead and then waking up inside coffins pounding.
Ugh.
Like actually waking up.
I saw a headline actually, not of a coffin, but of a body bag.
That too. Yep.
I didn't read the article, but I'm like, oh my God.
The headline is enough. And one of them I finally dug in and read actually. And I think it was like, your body does your body lets out like a final breath that can come later, but it's not that. It's like people waking up. In this article.
Yeah, no, they're alive.
They took the person to the hospital and then they died like hours or a day later. And I don't think that they would have lived had they not been in the coffin. I don't understand what's happening.
Yeek.
But that might be the one thing I'm absolutely terrified of. Waking up dead.
There was, oh man, I think did you and I see it at the theater maybe? But anyway, there was an old like Ryan Reynolds movie. It was like an art house film. Yes. And most of the movie he's been buried alive.
Isn't that the movie where you maybe screamed at some?
I did scream at some people in that movie. That was the point where I was like, I need to calm down in public. Because
you yelled at 3 teenage girls.
They were okay. In fairness, they were literally ruining the movie for everybody.
Yes.
Because that movie had no score.
That's right. God, what movie was that? It was
real quiet, tiny art house theater, and they were just like carrying on conversations.
The Lynze?
Lynze, yep.
Yeah.
And I remember like shushed them a few times, and then they looked like, who are you to shush me? And just like, if anything, they were louder, just snacking away, having a full conversation.
They had like their cell phones out.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like they were literally ruining the movie for everybody.
It was like they were in their own living room.
Yep. And I do remember I finally I go, hey, I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm like, you're not in your house. There are other people here. And then they looked at me like I was a monster and got up and left.
Yeah. It was
but then the movie was great after that. We all got to enjoy it.
We did. Psycho. I love you.
Are you ready to trade one creepy doll story for another now?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit of historical setup with this one. I'm trying to think now if I have shushed other people like that. I did. Yeah, I went through a phase. I remember shushing some guy too at a thing, and it's like
I think we stopped. And I mean, this is like tragic.
Oh yeah, there was the Denver.
The shooting in the movie theater, and then then not that it can't happen anywhere, but then living in Idaho, you're definitely more cognizant of who you might.
I know there's a lot of paranoid, unstable people here who are always packing.
Always.
Yeah. I know that is annoying in that sense where it's like I wish like if I could know if like there was a policy where you have to like Wild West. How they would turn in their guns when they come into town to the sheriff's office or like to the saloon keeper, like no guns in this specific business. I think I would feel much more inclined to yell at people often at the movies because it has gotten out of hand.
It is kind of wild.
It's been worse since 2020, since people came out of their hibernation and just like it got into the worst habits.
Yeah.
I just think like, how are you not aware that there's a bunch of other people here trying to enjoy this thing that you are ruining. And then I'm the asshole if I'm like, hey, shut up.
We could talk more about that in a bonus episode.
Okay. All right.
This could go on for a long time.
Okay. So we'll get into this story here. A little bit of setup. The Swiss Alps. Today, they are a popular, fun, and incredibly scenic tourist destination that inspires a sense of awe and wonder thanks to their natural beauty. But for many centuries, they were also a lonely, isolated place for many, and each valley is filled with plenty of unsettling folklore from that time. For example, cattle herders in the Alps have long practiced transhumance, a type of herding where cattle are taken to graze in high mountain pastures in the summer.
What's the word?
It's
trans what?
It's pronounced kind of like transhumance. It's TRANSHUMANCE. So it's almost like transhumans. It's pronounced basically the same, but spelled differently.
Okay, no, thank you.
Yeah, it's just a type of herding where you take cattle up to graze in the high mountain pastures in the summer, then move them down to the lower valleys in the winter when the higher areas become inhospitable. The herding done high in the mountains is often lonely work, and one of the creepiest folk tales to ever come out of the Alps has its origins in this loneliness. The story of the Sennentuntschi. Lonely herders high in the Alps would sometimes carve female wooden dolls when they felt that they were overly deprived of female companionship.
Oh boy.
These men would interact with these dolls as if they were real women, talking to them, having meals with them, and sometimes, getting physical with them. I'll let you decide what went on in that regard. And the men that did this allegedly risked attracting an evil spirit known as the Sennentuntschi. When these men were ready to abandon their carved companions, when it was time to abandon their work in the high-altitude summer lodges and return to the lower valleys for the winter, where more real living females would live, the spirit of the Sennentuntschi would possess these dolls and bring them to murderous life. These dolls would attack and murder their herders for using them while intending to soon cast them aside by literally skinning them alive. Some of the oldest legends say they would pull the men's skin off. Nothing more than folklore, or is there any kernel of truth in this old legend? Roughly a decade ago, there was an online thread about the Sennentuntschi, and a few users posted about two lonely men who had taken dolls in place of female companions, being murdered in a similar manner within a few months of each other. One of the forum users claimed to be the brother of the second man. The first man, never named, was supposedly killed high in the mountains in Switzerland, exactly where the lore comes from, but the second, listed as Adam, was killed far away in western Massachusetts. So why would anyone think these murders would be connected? Because Adam had supposedly visited the Swiss lodge where the herder was killed, about 3 weeks before his own very similar death. And according to the forum users, Adam took home a dangerous souvenir, a wooden female doll carved by the murdered lonely Swiss herder. Adam's brother claims he knows this because he found Adam's diary after he died, and what he wrote seems to definitely connect the two cases. The following are reportedly the relevant excerpts from said diary, a diary that Adam seemed to write as if he hoped for others to find it and read it someday. Time now for the tale of the Sennentuntschi. My suitcase is laying open on my bed, and a small wooden female doll is staring back at me, urging me to write about the most important part of my trip. I've just gotten home from spending 2 weeks backpacking through the Swiss Alps, hoping to find the old home of my great-grandfather Anton. A secondary goal was hoping beyond hope that if I got lucky, a girl or two would do more than absent-mindedly text me 2 or 3 times a day before losing my number. A man can dream. If you've been reading long enough to be familiar with my struggles with interacting with the opposite sex, I'm sure you would not be surprised to know that I was successful on the first front and unsuccessful on the second. But finding my great-grandfather's old lodge was worth the lack of female attention. My great-grandfather was a cattle herder, and he seemed to share an affinity for solitude with me. He was one of the rare Swiss herders that would stay in the high mountain pastures far above the tree line, not just during the summer months, but also during much of the winter, when he'd mend the lodge and keep it in working order for the next summer, passing most of his wintertime in it alone after his wife had returned to lower elevations. His son, my grandfather, married and moved to the United States, but he'd come back to visit his father a few times, taking his wife and daughter, my mom. My mom described him to me as sweet and friendly, but a bit antisocial. She also told me that whenever she visited, those who knew him would remark that he was very lucky to find a woman like my great-grandmother, since she didn't mind him living alone during the winter. If only I could find such a woman. Or if I'm being honest, if only I could find just about any woman. My grandparents and great-grandparents all died before I was born, but the stories my mom told me made me feel a connection with him that I've struggled to find in other people. And before I went, I talked to her about my dream of going to Urnerbauden, the village he lived in, and gaining a deeper connection with him. I would never have asked her to take me, as she already pays for my rent and groceries. I don't want to sound like a parasite, but normal jobs have always been difficult for me. It's not easy to listen to a boss who is only your boss because they have more experience than you, or are older than you, but not smarter than you. I have the same problem with teachers. I have too much brains and not enough experience. That has always been my problem. I'm working on biting my tongue more and playing the game. I just need a little time to ready myself before inevitably I have to enroll in college. I was overjoyed when my mom paid for me to take a trip to Switzerland for my 20th birthday. She's always been kind. I'll refrain from recounting the entire trip, as really the only thing of note that happened was finding Grandpa Anton's old lodge. It was tucked up in the mountains, a decent hike away from the actual village. And I learned that it had apparently been in use by other herders after Grandpa Anton, and that the most recent cattle herder hadn't been seen in a few days. In broken English, the villagers conveyed to me that he had been planning on leaving to look for better work, so they assumed he had simply left without anyone noticing. Upon finding the lodge, it appeared that the cattle herder had left in quite a rush. He had left some fresh cheese and milk, and it was beginning to spoil. The lodge smelled absolutely disgusting, and while it was still interesting to poke around, the stench was so bad I had to spend the night in my tent outside the building. Before I left, I wanted to take something from the lodge to remember Grandpa Anton by, and that's how I came into possession of a small wooden female doll I found laying on the dining room table. It looked almost freshly carved, so I don't think it was around in my great-grandfather's time, but everything else looked a bit too important for me to rationalize taking. I doubted anyone would miss the doll, so I tucked her into my bag. Although the trip didn't give me much hope of finding a wife like Grandpa Anton's, I think that type of woman is much more rare these days. It did inspire a goal within me to find peace in being alone, like he seemed to do. August 21st. I've been home a few weeks now, and whatever positive feelings I brought back with me from that trip have mostly been replaced by the same old loneliness that seems to almost always be a part of my day-to-day existence. I just can't seem to even ever win in the romance department. I never dated in high school. Those girls were too stupid and shallow. And since high school, it's gotten a lot harder to meet women since I don't have a job and I live alone. Not having a job makes it harder to run into women at work, obviously. And not having a lot of money makes dating almost impossible. Women always want you to pay for everything. I spend most of my time alone in my apartment, and when I'm out in the world, or the jungle as I like to call it, I don't know how to meet women, not any who I'd consider dating. The few girls I've talked to a bit in real life have always struggled to understand me, and I'm wise enough to know that any girl I meet online who seems interested is almost certainly no one I would want to date. They're probably not even a girl, probably some other guy just as desperate as me. I don't write all this because I want a pity party. I want you to understand why I've started to do something a lot of people would find unusual. Probably most people. I've started to talk to that doll from the Swiss cabin. I know how that sounds. I know she's not a real girl. But at least with her I can practice, right? We practice for almost everything else in life. Why not dating? I see it as a mental exercise, an opportunity to interact with a girl that actually understands and respects me, who isn't stupid and appreciates me for who I am. And I don't take her with me out of my apartment if you're wondering. I know how that would look. Other than this new addition to my life, everything else is the same. My brother is still working the same great job across the country, making tons of money, dating the same hot girl I would kill for, who probably does whatever he wants, whenever he wants, like some kind of real-life sex doll. Everything always comes easy for him. It's like he was born specifically to remind me of what I don't get to have. My mom continues her habit of texting me every week, asking me how my job search is going, and I keep telling her it's not going well. In reality, it's not going at all, so I have to lie to her. Yesterday, I told her about how a made-up fast food manager turned me down so harshly they might as well have ripped my resume apart in front of me. And she bought it. She always buys it. She's sweet, but she's not very smart. Like almost every other woman I've ever met. Sometimes I worry that is what will keep me from ever dating. How stupid women are. And if you're mad about that, I say don't shoot the messenger. If more women were smart, they'd see what I have to offer and not just write me off. Since the summer is coming to a close, my mom's most recent text included a link to some courses the local community college is offering online, and I told her that I would think about them. Maybe I really will. I need to start taking classes eventually. I hope the respect that comes with a college degree and the money that comes from a good job will let me toss aside my doll friend for an actual woman. August 23rd. Remember Laura? I wrote about her a bunch of times last year. We were friends for a few months, and she was one of the few girls I've met who was actually kind of smart. Jesus. She saw me for who I was, but of course she stupidly let the man she was dating at the time get in the way of us. And I told her she was being stupid. I don't think she appreciated my suggestion of me telling her she was being an idiot and dating some dumb, boring jock who probably was already cheating on her and that he would someday get fat and have nothing to offer. But that's the truth. I was just trying to warn her. Isn't that what you do with people you care about? You help them, you warn them. We haven't talked since that, and that was over a year ago. But I did notice she had broken up with her boyfriend a few months ago. I thought about calling her and telling her I told you so. But I assumed she was still upset with me. That's why I was so surprised when I opened my phone to a text from her this morning. It read, "Hey Adam, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I hope you're doing well. I saw your post about that trip you took a few weeks ago, and then I saw this news headline. This is where you went, right?" The text then included a link to a news article with the headline, "Reclusive Cattle Herder Found Dead in Urnerbauden, Switzerland." As I write this, I have not even opened the link. That may surprise you, but while I'm sure the cattle herder's death is very interesting, I'm more concerned with matters closer to home. I responded to Laura's text before reading the article and asked her out for lunch tomorrow. And to my delight, she accepted. I think it's a date, right? I don't want to jinx it, but I think there is at least a small chance that my girl problems are over. I'm incredibly excited to finally have an opportunity to get rid of the wooden doll. I recognize how creepy it would be just to keep treating it like a real girlfriend. I don't plan on telling Laura anything about it, because to be perfectly honest, I don't want to freak her out with certain things she just wouldn't understand. I won't even write down here everything I've done with my doll, but if you're reading this, I'm sure you can guess. August 23rd, second entry. I don't think I've ever written 2 entries in one day before. You will quickly understand why I've made this exception. I opened the news article my soon-to-be girlfriend Laura sent me, and what an idiot I am for not doing that sooner. The body of the cattle herder was found in my great-grandfather's old lodge, the one where I found my doll. The article said that he had been skinned. What's worse, he'd been killed right before I visited the lodge. I realized now that that disgusting smell in the cabin wasn't just spoiled dairy products, it was his rotting body. One of the most gruesome murders I've ever heard of, and I was at the scene of the crime right after it happened. I'm honestly surprised I wasn't questioned, but I hadn't given my name to anybody from the village, and there was no record of me spending the night at the lodge. But that's not even the craziest part. There were comments under the article, and one of them said that the man was killed by a mysterious spirit called a Sennentuntschi. I did a bit more research about this spirit, and what I found really has me feeling pretty freaked out. The Sennentuntschi is a spirit of Swiss folklore that comes from female wooden dolls carved by lonely herders. Wooden dolls exactly like the one I took from the lodge, the one I've been talking to for the past few weeks. Apparently, it only inhabits the doll if you talk to it and treat it like a real person and then want to get rid of it. Obviously, I never would have started talking to the doll if I would have known that I could do something like that. Not that I really believe in stuff like this, because I definitely don't. I'm not a stupid child. But tell me you wouldn't be at least a little freaked out if someone was just murdered in the exact way this thing is supposed to murder people in a place you had just visited. And then you read about how it kills people who talk to the doll, treat it like a real person, and then get rid of it, which is exactly what I've done and am about to do. This has to be one of the worst coincidences of all time, right? How perfect. I have the worst luck in the world with women, and even worse luck with a female doll. I'm not going to say anything around the doll about getting rid of her. In fact, I think I'm going to pretend we're going out for a date. Then I'll just throw her away in the trash. And probably spend the night at my mom's. Tell her I really miss her or something, want to hang out like we used to. Again, I don't believe in this stuff, but come on, anyone would be spooked a little. Wish me luck. The sooner I get rid of her, the sooner Laura and I can be together. That was the last entry Adam would ever write. After not hearing from him for a few days, his brother said that his poor mom, who had a key to his apartment, went to check on him. When she walked in, what she saw would destroy just about anyone. She found her son's dead, skinless body inside. Or did she? Is this all a bunch of nonsense? More creepypasta than actual paranormal truth? Or is the ancient Sennentuntschi real? Did Adam bring an old world monster into the new world? Did the Sennentuntschi find out Adam was about to move on and throw his doll in the trash? Silly superstition? Or does hell hath no fury, like a carved Swiss female doll scorned?
Or is Adam just an asshole?
Adam was a huge asshole.
And he doesn't seem like it at first. At first, you're kind of like, oh, poor guy. And then he starts,
this is why you have trouble with ladies.
Yeah. You're misogynistic, to say the least.
Yep.
You little fucker.
Uh-huh.
Okay, also,
yeah.
I couldn't stop thinking about Lars and the Real Girl.
Oh, yeah.
The whole time. I was just picturing that movie playing out in my head. And when you were first talking about the wooden doll, and how you're, implying that they would do more than just talk to the doll.
Right.
All I could think about was like dick blisters. It's like, I couldn't stop just thinking about like a wiener inside. I was like, oh man, you're going to get like dick splinters and dick blister. Like, I don't think anyone is.
No, I imagine it's more like, I don't want to get too graphic, but like just like some masturbating next to it or something.
Yeah.
And it is not there's an old one that I have a picture of. This is a picture of, before I get to the doll, actually. Let's start off with a picture of Ernerbauden Village.
Okay. Yes, I love Switzerland.
Yeah, so pretty, like those mountains behind, my God.
Everything about Switzerland is beautiful, always.
And then this is the Alpine Valley that town sits in. Just,
yes.
Wow.
I'm trying to convince my mom to go to Switzerland.
Cool. And then this is, they don't know how old it is, but centuries. This is an old Sennentuntschi doll found in the Alps.
Oh dear, she is not attractive.
No. Now that's desperate times. My God.
I was at least thinking more like Russian nesting dolls.
No, this is just some dude up in the mountains with a carving knife, and he grabbed a stick, and he's like, that'll do. Probably took some of his own hair, stuck it on the doll's head.
Look at the toes, though. That's a lot of fine detail.
Mm-hmm. A lot of time on his hands.
How are you able to do that, but you couldn't give it like a smaller neck, reasonable shoulders?
He started with the toes and worked his way up, and he got bored with it.
He got real lazy. He's like, I can't. I'm over it.
It's like something out of a nightmare. And then this is something that looks similar. I thought this was a Sennentuntschi at first, but I just found it interesting. This is a toggly doll whose hair the toggly is supposed to be able to grab because it apparently loves to ruffle hair. And the toggly is the Swiss Alps version of the night hag. So this is, I found this kind of fascinating.
Do tell.
So people would put this like in their bed at night so that the night hag would come for this thing and not them. And
how much would you love to sleep next to that?
Oh, I know. And then see the cross behind it with the spikes coming out?
Uh-huh.
People would put that on their chest at night, hoping that when the night hag tried to ride them in the middle of the night, it would sit on the spikes and that would like hurt it and it would, scurry away.
I'm a very restless sleeper. And when I see that cross and then I think about how I move around, I just think I would just impale myself.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt. No, what's that knife about?
That's the carving knife that they use
That's a big-ass knife they use to make that doll.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. How do you practice dating?
I know. Yeah. I think it is one of those things where it's just practice by doing.
Yeah, I think Adam was overthinking it.
Oh, yeah. It reminds him, the concept of like practicing with the doll to like figure out dating reminds me of like the stand-up comic like practicing in the mirror.
Oh God.
Their routine before like performing their set. I've yet to ever meet a comic who that was part of their thing was I'm going to practice the stuff in the mirror who was just worth a shit. They're always like beyond uncomfortable. Like it's really, really bad. And it's like, well, yeah, you're like, first of all, if your instinct is to do that, you don't have the right instincts for this. and then second, like if that's what you're doing all the time, you're conditioning yourself for an unnatural set. Like if it was dating, if you're having this little interaction, like a script you're working out, then I just picture you have a real date. They're never going to follow the script that you've built in your mind.
Mm-hmm. And
so now you're focused on like, well, I'm going to say this, and then they're going to say that. And then when they don't say that, which they won't, now you're thrown off and you panic. And it's worse now than if you'd just never done anything.
And yet we practice for like interviews, for jobs.
But I think those are generally more straightforward. Like interviews generally follow like a certain path. They're going to ask you certain standard questions.
Maybe.
I mean, I guess.
Still a conversation though, and you still don't know what the person on the other side is going to say. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but also most first dates are pretty much the same. Where did you grow up? What do your parents do? Do you have siblings? What do you like to do for fun? Do you have hobbies? Do you travel? What kind of music do you like? What's your favorite food? Like, I think I just laid out the first date questions. But
I think that if like, okay, for a job interview, it's okay to be a little wooden, to like, it can
fair.
It can just look like you've prepped, like you've taken it seriously. Where if I was on a date with somebody and it felt like they've been prepping.
Who are you on a date with? You don't go on dates.
I don't go on dates, but in the past. But if like.
No, never.
Never. It would just feel like, it would read as like a weird intensity. If it felt like they'd been prepping for this.
That's true.
I wouldn't want a date to feel like a job interview.
Well, also, I guess too, like you bypassed online dating. You're just old enough
no,
that
I had friends that were doing it. I just didn't do it.
Oh, you didn't? I thought it was like a age gap thing. But those become when you are like a serious, like when you're like, I am bound and determined to find my person.
Like speed dating.
Kind of. You're just like, just line up a bunch of online dates and it's just the same date over and over.
Yeah. Ay.
No more of that.
No more.
You don't ever get to go on any dates ever again.
True.
Only with me.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you have a Layla over there? I forgot to check in before show.
I do.
Blue Layla?
Mm-hmm.
Blayla?
Hello,
Blayla. Okay, well, I think we should just dive right in.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Ready.
Do it again. Are you ready?
Ready.
For those of you who aren't watching, Dan's just like holding up his Layla and squeezing her head like, ready. Ready, player one. Hey, Lynze and Dan.
Hello.
I thought this story might be of particular interest
Nope.
we should skip it, right?
Skip it. I don't like how it started.
All right. Sorry, dude. Can you imagine? As I'm deeply skeptical and scientifically minded. I approached this, my one and only paranormal experience, from that perspective. I hope you both enjoy it. My dad and I both shared an interest in stories of the paranormal, but from the perspective of hoping to find a story that provided adequate data to be confirmed as paranormal. We're both firmly rooted in the sciences, and empirical evidence is important to us, which makes us natural skeptics of anecdotal paranormal experiences. This is the only experience I've had for which I've failed to find a reasonable explanation. I moved in with my dad about 5 years ago after a bad breakup while I was looking for a new place to live. My dad lived in a new-ish 3-bedroom house on a very quiet, safe street in a small neighborhood. At that time, I had some residual trauma from reckless behaviors while I was deep in addiction. Before I got help for this, sleep was very difficult. I slept in my dad's bedroom while he slept in one of the other bedrooms because, from his room, I could see all of the other rooms easily and quickly without getting out of bed. The other rooms were odd shapes that didn't allow for that. My dad didn't like being retired, so he joined the company that I worked for doing some consulting. He would occasionally go out of town for a week or so, leaving me alone. My anxiety was high as I was getting ready for bed, knowing I was alone in the house. I checked all the locks in the house, shut the bedroom door, and I locked that too. I fell asleep for what felt like only minutes. I awoke suddenly with my heart pounding, which was not unusual for me at the time. I took some deep breaths, trying for sleep again. As I closed my eyes, I heard a sound come from what I assumed was the kitchen. Metallic clanging and the sounds of drawers opening and closing. It lasted just a few seconds and then stopped. Fuck, there's someone in the house, I thought. I got up and I pressed my ear against the bedroom door. Nothing. Complete silence. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep unless I confirmed that no one was in the house. I got out of bed, opened the door, and headed straight to the kitchen. Everything was in its place. You're losing it, I said under my breath while checking the rest of the house. All of the doors were locked. Yep, definitely losing it. Go back to bed, I told myself. Several nights later, after following my usual lockup routine, I laid down again to sleep. I'd successfully shaken off the experience from the other night. I closed my eyes and began to drift off. While lying there on my side, half asleep, I felt a wisp of air pass my ear. I perked up, looking around. Nothing. I decided to check the thermostat to see if I had somehow accidentally turned on the air conditioning, but it was off. I laid back down, closed my eyes, and started to drift off again. Another small pulse of air hit my ear as if someone had leaned down to whisper into my ear, "Harrison." I sat up, but the room was empty. What the fuck? I must have been dreaming, I thought. I managed to fall back asleep and remained asleep without incident. My dad came home from the marketing trip the next day. I decided not to share the experiences with him and settled on the explanation that it was related to my sleep problems. He asked me how I slept while he was gone, and I told him I'd had a rough couple of nights, but I left it at that. I took to the internet to do some research, remembering something I'd learned in college about things called hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations. Hypnagogic hallucinations are imagined sensations that occur while falling asleep, while hypnopompic hallucinations are imagined sensations that occur while waking up. I wanted to see if there was any connection between PTSD symptoms and the elevated likelihood of experiencing these hallucinations. I did find some research articles that supported this idea, and it helped to settle my mind a bit. I wasn't all that concerned about anything paranormal at the time. I was much more concerned that a psychological issue was beginning to emerge. I let it go and figured this would get better after I started seeing a trauma therapist. A month or so later, my dad left again for another marketing work trip. Armed with information, I prepared myself for the possibility that sleep was going to be a weird experience. I performed the usual door locking routine, meditated for a while to try and ease my nerves, laid down to go to sleep, and started to drift off. "Harrison," I heard the whisper, breath on my ear. My eyes opened wide. I resisted the urge to look around and rationalized to myself that it was nothing more than what I had read about. My eyelids grew heavy and again began to fall asleep. Then, boom, boom, boom. Before I was fully awake of what was happening, I was standing next to my bed, trying to catch my balance before I stood up too quickly. It sounded like somebody just pounded on the door. I tried to focus and take a few deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth, I repeated to myself. You were just dreaming. It's okay. Sit down. Just breathe, I coached myself. I sat on the bed, continuing to breathe deeply while staring at the door. I repeated the information I had read over and over again in my mind. None of this happened while you were fully awake, Harrison. Relax. In through your nose, out through your mouth, I coached myself again. And then another boom, boom, boom. The door violently shook with each knock. Fuck, there's definitely someone in the house, and they know I'm in here. It reminded me of the way that a police officer would knock on a door, but there was no announcement of who was on the other side. Hoping I'd just not heard them and that it was a cop, I shouted, trying to sound tougher than I felt. Who the fuck is it? My voice trembled. Real tough, Harrison, I thought. Good job, dude. I thought to myself. No response. I sat there staring, waiting for another round of knocking. But nothing. God damn it. I forced myself up from bed begrudgingly and approached the door. Still several feet away from the door, I awkwardly leaned in to see if I could hear anything. Still nothing. I snuck back to the bedside table and grabbed a heavy flashlight. Better than nothing, I guess, I thought to myself, trying to provide some comfort. I walked as quietly as I could back to the door and very slowly unlocked it, hoping it wouldn't make any sounds. I pulled the door open, arm cocked back, flashlight in hand, and nothing. Thank God nobody's here to see this, I thought, while standing there in nothing but my boxers with the flashlight in hand. I took a deep breath, let my shoulders drop, and shamefully did a walk through the house. All the doors were still locked. I returned to bed, but I couldn't fall asleep. I wrote in my journal thinking that maybe a detailed description of what was happening would help the therapist when I eventually met with him. While writing in my journal, it occurred to me that it might be helpful to see if I could find a cause for the knocking sound. That was the only thing that had happened while I was awake. I wanted an explanation in case it happened again. As soon as the sun lit up the house, I showered and began exploring the house for a cause. My first thought was to look in the attic. The house was built on a slab foundation, so the water pipes would run through the attic. I knew pipes could have odd behaviors, and I figured I'd be able to see if there was anything running near the bedroom door. Despite my extreme skepticism of the paranormal, attics are still an unpleasant and creepy place. I grabbed a flashlight, a tape measure, and a few small hand tools. Then I placed a ladder beneath the scuttle, climbed up, and pushed it aside. Musty, hot, and dark. This should be fun, I thought, hoisting myself inside. I used the tape measure to figure out approximately where the bedroom door was and clambered over that way. Nothing but itchy insulation. I should have brought gloves with me, I muttered as I pulled up pieces of insulation near the door. Not a pipe in sight. I estimated where the master bathroom was and made my way over there. My plan was to trace the pipes from there. The closest pipe was approximately 5 feet away from the door. No chance it was going to make the door rattle like that. Both relieved and frustrated, I climbed down from the attic and on to the next idea. My next hypothesis was that something had fallen into the door or near the door and I'd simply missed the object while I was walking around half awake. I was reasonably certain that this wasn't the case, but I had to rule it out. I searched around the door and found absolutely nothing. I tried everything I could to think of to recreate those rhythmic knocks to no avail. I spent hours trying to figure it out before I decided to just let it go. Defeated, I headed to the hardware store for a security bar to jam under the doorknob, thinking it would serve two purposes. First, it might hold the door in place and muffle the knocking if it happened again, and second, it would provide an extra layer of protection in case someone really was getting into the house. That night, I locked all the doors, placed the newly purchased security bar under the doorknob, and I gave the knob a solid tug, making sure it didn't budge. I knew sleep wouldn't come easily that night. Maybe I need sleep meds, I wondered. I laid down on my back, propped up by a pillow with the intention of meditating myself to sleep. I forced my eyes shut and began taking deep breaths. Just get your body to relax. In through your nose, out through your mouth, I told myself. And somehow, I managed to fall asleep. Harrison! A voice shouted. I jolted awake, immediately locking eyes with a humanoid face. My peripheral vision picked up the rest of its body, frozen in place as if it had just crawled into bed and over my body. I blinked once, and it was gone. I laid there motionless, my ears ringing with each pounding heartbeat. Seconds later, I heard a splash of water release from the tub spout in the attached bathroom. Breathe, breathe, slow your heart down. You're okay. In through your nose, out through your mouth. What the fuck is going on? I mumbled. It's probably nothing. Just get up and go look. I bet you're going to find a tub that is dry. I got up from bed, walked into the bathroom, and turned on the light. This is ridiculous, I thought, as I reached for the shower curtain. Well, shit. Looks like I fucked something up in the attic, I muttered. It looked like maybe about a cup of water had dumped out of the spout. I reached down to touch it just to make sure I wasn't seeing things, and it was definitely wet. Boom, boom, boom. The fucking knocking again. Fear and frustration turned to rage. I dashed from the bathroom to the door, ripping the security bar from under the knob, flinging the door open, holding the security bar like a bat. I yelled into the darkness, "Where the fuck are you?" I searched every inch of the house, turned on every light, checked each lock, and tugged on every door to make sure they couldn't have been opened. Nothing out of place, no one to be found. I sat down on the couch in the living room, the rage and the stress working its way through my shaking hands. You're really losing it, I thought to myself as hot tears rolled down my cheeks. When my dad returned several days later, he could tell that something was wrong. He asked me if I wanted to talk about it, but I brushed it off and just said, "Nope, I'm good. My sleep's just been fucked up." Thankfully, whatever was going on seemed to have stopped after that night. Shortly after, I found a new place to live, packed up my things, and moved out. I got myself into therapy, and my symptoms got much better. I slowly forgot about my experiences in the house. Until months later, I went over to my dad's house to make dinner. Afterwards, I sat with him outside while he smoked a cigar. He was giving me updates about his health and his chronic pain, which was a pretty routine conversation for us. He told me that the pain had been interfering with his sleep much more than normal lately. He said that his doctor had put him on some sleep medication that week and that he had been having some weird side effects. As the conversation went on, we laughed about the sleepwalking and the sleep eating. The laughter and talking naturally fizzled to silence. And then after a few quiet moments, my dad started chuckling again. He shared with me something weird that had happened the night before he started taking the sleep medication. He said, "I woke up thinking I heard my name being called. Then it sounded like someone knocked on the door a few times." My stomach dropped. Goosebumps covered my body. What did it sound like?" I asked, trying to conceal my emotions. My dad casually replied, "It sounded like a police officer was knocking on the bedroom door, that distinct knocking pattern, you know? Boom, boom, boom." It startled me. I opened it and no one was there. I don't know. I must have still been half asleep. I sat there silently debating how to respond. Do I tell him about what happened while I was living there? I decided not to and instead just let out a, yeah, that's weird, Dad." I was completely comfortable with the explanation I'd given myself until this conversation with my dad. Everything that happened to me was able to be written off as a psychological oddity. But now what? I have no idea how to explain that we both experienced the same thing separately without ever having discussing it prior. I never did tell my dad about my experiences in the house. I'm happy to report that I've never had another experience like that, and sometimes I can't help but wonder if he had had any other experiences like that but chose not to tell me about it.
That's a good one. Before I have some paranormal questions, sleep eating. Harrison mentioned his dad, he references sleep eating.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of that before. Sleepwalking I've heard of.
I bet you have. It was like when they first started prescribing a medication for insomnia, people would like wake up in their kitchens. Oh man. I want to say it's a medication that starts with like an A.
That would be so annoying if you would like eat, in your sleep, walk to the kitchen, make yourself a meal, eat it, go back to bed and not know. It's like if you were trying to like diet essentially.
Wasted calories.
Like you just sabotaging yourself and you can't even help it.
Yeah, I'll look it up later, but there like is a very specific medication that was a side effect.
And then a detail I liked in that story was when Harrison went to go check the bathtub, the shower for water, and then heard the knocking coming from the door when he was checking the shower. Yeah. That made it clear to me that it wasn't just a case of dreaming. Mm-hmm. Like when all of the encounters take place in the night, when someone's in bed, a part of my brain is always thinking like, yeah, this is scary, but it also could for sure be a nightmare.
That's so true.
But he seemed to be pretty awake if he's able to take the security bar off, do all that. He has memories of all that. Didn't seem like he woke up sleepwalking in the shower. It's like it was conscious choice to go in there and all that stuff. Yeah, definitely. And then obviously what he says at the end about his dad experiencing that without him having talked to his dad. Mm-hmm. And I always like it in these stories when the encounters are limited. Yes. If they just happened for like a week or a weekend and didn't happen before, didn't happen afterwards, someone else has the same thing in that exact location, then that also tells me like this isn't just a you thing where it could be like something going on in your brain that is making you think you're seeing things all over the place.
Right.
Not that can also happen.
Of course. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because like Harrison definitely refers to having some PTSD, having some struggles with addiction. And so, I always lean into this, well, not always, but I tend to lean into this thing of like, spirits that seem to be evil seem to try and latch onto people who are
struggling.
Yes, they're in a less than perfect state, So it seems totally plausible. And then to find out that Harrison's dad has since passed away, and so there's no going back and like discussing this with his dad now, just as an FYI. But his dad was in chronic pain, and I'm like, oh, then that's also someone who's like struggling.
Yeah,
it's a different kind of struggle. Yeah, but chronic pain will wear you down. So it's like, oh man, if either one of them gave into this, what could have happened?
Right.
And I think it really lends itself to wondering about like, how much should we brush off? Like if we think we hear something, it's like, I don't know, maybe that is, maybe that isn't. Sometimes I think it's good that we brush it off because then we're not feeding into it. We're not giving it what it wants. Yeah.
Made me think about last night, you and I on the couch. And it was I'm 99% sure it was the ice maker in the fridge. But just the way it was like a quiet part. We're watching a show. It was quiet. Yep. And just heard some. And both of us did a little like, did you just hear that?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, we're watching that new show on Netflix. Eric. It is good.
It is good.
It's good. Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah.
Whichever one it is,
such
he's good.
An excellent actor. It's really good. Okay. Do you have time for one more, Dan? Or should we get out of here?
No, I know. I'll hear it.
Okay, yeah.
I'll hear you out.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Madam and Monsieur Spooperton. Most people are quick to dismiss me and my stories. I'm not sure why, because they seem to have stories of their own. As for my birth mom, I'm pretty sure she dismisses me because she's scared. Let me explain. I have a second mom. I don't mean that in a dad has a new wife or mom has a new girlfriend way. I mean it in there's a second version of my mom that's always around me. It's gone on for years and has started getting worse recently. I'm not sure where she came from or when she even started showing up. The first time I do remember seeing her isn't really a scare so much as a startle. To make this easier, I'll call my real gave birth to me mom by her name Rebecca, and this other mom, well, just other mom. Rebecca used to visit a friend about an hour and a half away and would leave me home alone when I was in my late teens. This is the first time I remember seeing my other mom. I was bopping around the house, eating noodles, doing normal teen stuff. Everything suddenly grew really quiet, but I didn't think much of it. I put my bowl in the sink, and on my way, I glanced in the mirror on the wall, and there was a woman behind me, and she looked just like Rebecca. I thought it was weird she was already home. I turned around, and surprise, nobody was there. I pushed it to the back of my mind. Little odd things like this have happened since then, but more recently, bigger things have begun happening. In August, I adopted a new cat. When I first got him, he was confined to my room until he was used to the house. Every night for a month, he would wake me up in the middle of the night. And if you guessed it was 3 a.m., then you'd be right. I thought it was because maybe his last owner got up at 3 a.m., but in my heart, I knew that probably wasn't it. In September, I went to my sister's house and spent the night. I was asleep in the living room, which is attached to her kitchen. Her boyfriend works night shifts, and he came home around 2:30 or maybe 2:45 in the morning and went right to the kitchen to make a snack. The next day, he told me I sounded like I was dying in my sleep, that I was gasping for air, making weird rattling noises, that it sounded like I had stopped breathing at one point, and that I eventually sat straight up, shook my head, and then lied back down and went to sleep. He thought I had heard him and was startled, but then went back to sleep once I saw him. Logically, you could think sleep apnea or sleepwalking sitting, but Rebecca confirmed she had never ever heard me stop breathing or doing anything weird in my sleep. The next night, I slept at home. My cat came into my room and started meowing and batting me until I woke. Again, 3 a.m. I opened my eyes enough to see the cat, but I also saw a black shadow in the corner of my ceiling. I stared at it for a couple of seconds before I reached for the cat and forced him to hide under the blankets with me. I felt a cold breeze and pulled the cat closer to me. I laid there until my alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. I was tired and irritable when I went to work that next day. This made me think about how I used to see my other mom in mirrors, though I hadn't thought about her in a long time. Could this have been her? Was it something else? A few nights later, I was lying in my room with the cat, playing a game with the door shut. Suddenly, I heard someone pounding on my bedroom door, screaming my name. My first instinct was, oh, Rebecca needs me for something. Except, if she truly did, she would have just opened my door. It had to be her. It had to be my other mom. I sat up and stared at my door, and I heard her again. Haley, don't ignore me, Haley. I felt sick to my stomach. I reached for my phone and I called Rebecca. She answered and was super annoyed with me, asking what I was doing calling her when I could have just walked into her bedroom. I asked if she'd been calling for me. Of course, she said no. She'd been in the shower. I stayed in my room for the rest of that night. Fast forward about a month to October. I work at a plant in a small town that's been around since the 1950s. Rebecca works there as well. There's a mandatory Saturday shift. We have the option to work 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. or 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now, I'm not one to want to waste my time at work on a Saturday, so I opted for the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift so I could have the rest of my weekend. Of course, most people don't think like that, and there were only about 4 other people working. I work in the back of the plant, so I made my way there. All the lights were off, which, whatever. I found the light switch, flipped it on, and immediately saw a shadow going around a corner. I followed it to see who was there that would be working with me that morning. But of course, there was no one there. I figured I'd just put on some music, bust out my work, and the day would be over soon enough. It was about an hour into my workday when my phone shut itself off. I knew I had charged it. I turned it back on, and it was at 90%. Okay, weird. I started my music again, but then my phone shut itself off again. I turned it back on, but now the clock was the only thing that would work, and it was 3 a.m. I stood up, left my phone on the table, and went to go find Rebecca. I needed to take a break, have some coffee, do something. As I rounded the corner where I had seen the shadow before, the lights turned off in my section, and my phone started ringing on the table where I had left it. I quickly found Rebecca. We had a quick snack, some coffee, hung out in the break room, and then I insisted she come with me back to my department, and that we bring my friend Riley as well. Rebecca brushed it off. If you want to ask Riley, you can, but I'm not going back there. I most definitely asked him to come with me. When we got back there, the lights were on, and I had 3 missed calls from Mama, which is what Rebecca is listed as in my phone. Weird. I had just been with Rebecca. She hadn't called me. I grabbed some things to work on and then went back up front to work with Riley so I could do my job around other people. At 6 a.m., Rebecca and I went back to my department to put my tools back. We found that the lights were now off. I set my tools down just inside the doorway and we hustled out of there. Rebecca said maybe the maintenance guys were trying to play a joke on me, but I don't think so. I did not tell her about the missed calls because I checked her phone and she definitely had not called me. Things started to feel weird in my house. It's the beginning of November. My cat continues waking me up at 3 a.m. I was lying in my bed, my cat was up near my shoulders when I felt something claw-like scratch at my feet from my heel up to my toes directly in the middle of my foot, one at a time. I tucked my feet closer to my body and somehow forced myself to sleep. Then mid-November, I was in Rebecca's room watching a movie with her. When it was over, I left and shut her door behind me. On my way out, I saw a shadow in the dining room. I felt sick to my stomach. I backed up to Rebecca's door and reopened it. I told her I had seen something. She checked the entire house, but of course there was nothing. I told myself it was my own shadow, only to then realize that you have to have light behind you to cast a shadow, and I had shut Rebecca's door. Couldn't have been my shadow. I couldn't sleep that night. And then, November 23rd, there was a sound like a 2-liter bottle falling onto a hardwood floor. Rebecca heard it. I heard it. The cat heard it. We all made our way to the kitchen, but of course, nothing. November 24th. I was in my room with the cat when I heard 3 distinct knocks on my window. You can't duplicate the sound of knocking on glass anywhere in my house. November 25th. We walked to my grandma's house just up the road. While walking to her house, I noticed footprints in the dirt next to my window, but none leading up to the window. Just 2 footprints below my window, and my window is 6 or 7 feet up in the air. Nothing else has happened yet, but I sure feel it will. On days when nothing happens, I usually have heavy thoughts of my great-grandmother and see cardinals a lot, which has always been our sign that she's around. I'd like to think that whatever other mom is up to, my great-grandma is trying to protect me from her. Stay creepy, stay safe, Haley.
Thanks, Haley.
Yeah.
Second Haley today.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty funny. Start and end with Haley's.
Yep.
Yeah. Unwanted mom.
I know. I like how she other mom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, and it's such like a the phone calls is actually what bothered me the most.
Yeah.
That she's with her mom in the break room without her phone.
Right.
And then she goes what? You and I wouldn't be sitting across from one another.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be calling me multiple times.
Right. Yep.
So that's super, super creepy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that specific detail really just got under my skin.
Yeah.
Good
stories today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. On that one.
Did you make any notes?
Nope.
Okay.
Just had their names to make sure I got it all right. I did write down something though. I just thought the first Haley story that I told today.
Yeah.
I remember you laughing about that little detail of when she pranked her brother by setting lotion and tissue.
With the doll?
With the doll in his room when he brought a girl over for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking with Kyler now coming home in the summers, that would be such a funny prank if we knew he was bringing some girl over to the house for the first time.
Yes.
Mess up his bed and just leave big thing of lotion and then some kind of porno magazine on his bed, and then between the wall in his bed have some weird little sex doll. Just make it look so crazy.
I have so many thoughts of what it could things that we could do.
Because he would get so embarrassed.
Well,
my parents must have, he would just get so flustered and then laugh but also be so mad.
We'd have to know ahead of time the temperament of this person.
Well, that's true because that it could colossally backfire if then it freaks her out and then he really liked her and then that leads to the end of the beginning of their dating.
Oh God. And then he's mad at us.
Oh yeah. Never recover from that one.
And just always oh man.
The one that got away.
Yep. Although he's never dated a stick in the mud.
No, actually. Not really. Not since he started to really properly date.
Yeah, I was trying to think about some other girls, but
no.
Our kids so far, decent dating choices.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No one that I'm oh man, I wish you guys were a little bit older so you could take this more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
That one would be a good, daughter-in-law. No, haven't had those thoughts yet.
Yep, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No, sir, that's all.
Do you want to thank the Annabelles first or me?
Sure, I would love to. I would like to thank the following Annabelles for all their love and support on Patreon: Tiffany Little, Brandon Bennett, Chloe Lynn, Cammie Adams, Natalie Henry, Annabelle, namesake, Annabelle Calkins, Danny Carter, and Andrew Churchill.
Well, thank you, Annabelles. And I would like to thank the following Annabelles so much for supporting what we do here: Emily Manley, Tanya Cusick, Brianna Guerrero, Alexander Schwartz, Amy Mozzie, Creepy Cascadia Pod, Leela Marie, Leo Xavier Hernandez, and Darian Jones. And I'm wondering if Creepy Cascadia is a podcast.
Maybe
they have their own podcast.
I was thinking of Cascadia Pizza immediately.
Oh yeah, new pizza place.
Is that place?
Yep.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah, very good.
It's good.
You don't usually care about pizza.
I don't. So expensive though. That's how I feel about all food now. We get a bill and I'm what?
I
know.
Yeah.
Can I do some spoopy shout outs?
Yeah, spoop.
Hey bro, thanks.
Get to spooping.
Okay, I'll spoop it right up. To Nikki M from your brother Evan. Happy birthday. Thanks for introducing me to the world of spoops and Timesuck. I love you. Light one up for me. To Brendan from Jason. I love you and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. To Jeff from Mercedes. Thank you for being my rock in our infertility journey and in our fertility journey and dude, let's start that over. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. Reboot.
To Jeff from Mercedes, thank you for being my rock in our fertility journey and reminding me what unconditional love can do. There is nothing we can't conquer together.
Aw,
yes,
that's great.
So sweet.
Well, thanks for continuing to send in your personal tales of terror to mystory@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. You can email us for everything else, info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. Thanks to Logan Keith, editing, publishing, scoring today's show. Thanks to Heather Rylander for organizing the My Story emails. To book editor Drew Atana, polishing and preparing listener stories now for book number 6 as we await book number 5.
Yes, we'll have some announcements about that soon.
Yeah. Thank you to producer Molly Box for finding the first story I told this week. Kyler Cummins found the second. We are on YouTube if you want to watch the show, on Facebook and Instagram where we post pics that accompany episodes and more at Scared to Death Podcast. Also have a private Facebook group, Creeps and Peepers, full of fellow horror lovers, moderated by the All-Seeing Eyes. So thanks for doing a continually fantastic job. And enjoy your nightmares, Creeps and Peepers. Hope you were scared to death.
Bye.
If spirits threaten me in this place, fight water by water and fire by fire. Banish their souls into nothingness and remove their powers until the last trace. Let these evil beings flee through time and space. Evil may pass through, but hath no home here within, scared to death.
Bad Magic Productions.
All I could think about was like dick blisters.